My name is Naomi Zara Wilkinson. It's the 29th of November 2012 and I am 29 years old. I'm sitting with my grandma in her living room in Leyland, in Lancashire. Do you want to say hello, Grandma?
Oh, hello. I'm Irene May Wilkinson, and I am having a lovely visit from my granddaughter Naomi from Bristol, and it is thoroughly enjoyable and happy, the occasion.
It is happy. It's lovely to spend some time with you because we live so far apart from each other that it's not often we get quality time together. So we're making the most of it.
Yes.
We went for a lovely walk yesterday on Warden Park. Well, it was lovely for me. It was a bit cold for Grandma. Age, are you 94 now, Grandma?
94.
94. So it's a bit chilly. So today we're going to stay indoors and make mince pies.
Yesterday was definitely too cold, and it was because the very air was cold. As you breathed it, it seemed to freeze in your face. It seemed to be impossible to draw the breath in because of the freezing quality of the air. Really, really frozen everywhere it seemed to be. I don't know. The sun was shining. I think it ought to have felt warmer than it did, but it was probably the wind, which seemed to be coming from every direction under the sun and was very, very cold.
It was, but you battled bravely through, didn't you, Grandma?
So it was, well done. We did battle through, revived by a hot chocolate in a convenient, warm building called Coffee Bar, and that was like magic.
It was.
Absolute magic.
It was. Yeah. So I wanted to start by asking you, Grandma, my question that I'd like to ask you is about love, because it's something that I'm thinking about a lot at the moment. I'd like to ask you what love means to you. What do you think love is?
I always remember St. Paul's letter to the Corinthians about the qualities, and he said, and in the end, I remember the final words, in the end abideth these three, faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. And he was talking about the qualities in life, faith, hope, and love, and the greatest quality is love. And I always bear that in mind and realise how greatly it does matter. And I honestly wish that somehow the nations could find love, that people could find love, not just for an individual, could look for something to love in different people. I wish that the quality of love could be more reflected in the communities. I wish that we could live together in love and harmony somehow. I don't know how it could be achieved, but would really want it to be aimed for eventually by mankind.
So Grandma, can I ask you, is that something that you feel that you have done in your life? Like if there are things that you found it difficult to love a person or kind of people or an experience, have you found a way to love that thing even though that's been difficult to do?
The time when I found it the very most difficult was when, at the time of the Nazi uprising, and we did not have television at the time. Some people might have, but it was very rare. But if we went to the cinema, which is what most people did, there were always these pictures of the German youth marching, 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 all with these stony faces, completely expressionless. And then there was the Chancellor Hitler, really hatefully shouting and shouting horrible words about everybody and how wicked all the nations were except the pure German race. And the German race were the super race and should be the super race throughout the world, and all other nations should realise that Nazi Germany was the be-all and end-all, and we should all bow down and think we would do everything to please them. And there was such hatred in the faces that I never forgot. It was so scary to these people who did not know us, marching and shouting all these slogans that were hating the other nations that did not bow down to Nazi Germany. And it was the most scary period of my life. And I did think then about Paul's gospel and the quality of love. And I still hate war and cannot bear to think that nations would war against each other again. I do hope they never do, because the horror of it is simply unimaginable to me now, even though I lived through it. I cannot think about it without thinking, but how could this be? How could? And then I think back and I come to the Crusade period and remember the horrible period when the Crusaders, who were marching under a cross of Christianity, slaying Arabs by the thousands. And you know why the world goes like this is because they hate somehow instead of loving. So I am quite passionate about it, particularly since the last war, which to me was the time of horror, which I hope and pray will never ever be repeated again. So now when the nations seem to be intermingling, seem to be joining together, seem to be growing together more with the mobility of the populations, I do feel quite hopeful. If only we could open our hearts to strangers, if only we could show a friendly face, if only we could smile at them in the supermarket when they are a different colour than ourselves, even though we don't know them. If only a friendly atmosphere could be provided instead of, this is our country, you can't come. So I am hopeful that this is now at last going to happen. I feel quite happy about that.
You feel hopeful?
Yes.
Hopeful for the future. Do you know, I think it's nice that you mentioned that about smiling at people in the supermarket, no matter where they're from, or even just for me this morning going to the supermarket here in Leyland, I notice how much difference there is in me when I can find a smile to offer to somebody in the cereal aisle.
Well, it does happen to all of us. We're next to someone with coloured skin who obviously cannot speak English, and we don't need to turn away. We can just smile at them and quite often they smile back. And somehow it's just that simple gesture of a smile makes a lot of difference, instead of what are you doing here, pushing in front of me on the shelves, you know. And instead of that feeling, but just to smile, just to welcome, just to make the feeling.
Think of a particular smile, a particular person's smile that has touched your heart. What's the first smile that comes to your mind's eye?
Oh dear me. The first smile, of
Yeah.
course, for any mother is the baby's smile.
Ah.
After their expressions are all wild and loose and uncoordinated at first.
Yeah.
Then the first time the baby smiles
Yeah.
and focuses on the face, it's an absolutely amazing moment, and a definite smile, and that's all gorgeous. I think any mother would appreciate that. And smiles, yes, it's nice when you're little and someone sits next to you in school that you none of you know anyone, and I was sitting my first day at school thinking, didn't know anyone at all, and the teacher said a very nice thing, I thought. She said, let us all get to know each other, but instead of thinking of Irene as Irene and William over there as William, can we not think of people as flowers? For instance, Irene's got blue eyes, so Irene can be a bluebell. Dorothy is very, very tall, so she can be a daffodil. And William is very cheeky looking, so I don't know, she said, I'm trying to think of can anybody think of a word for William in the flowers? And we couldn't think of a word with a cheeky little face that resembled a flower. And I pondered about that a few times. The idea was good, but really, all that
What about a snapdragon?
Oh, that would have done.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. And I should have thought of that. Good, yeah.
You finally found.
She could have said, just smile at each other, but she
Yeah.
was trying to think of something extra. And so you see, a smile is simple. Anyone can do it.
Yeah.
Can't always think of a word to describe a person like snapdragon, like bluebell, like daffodil.
Yeah.
But it is another idea. A smile is better.
Yeah. It is. For anyone listening there, Grandma's got a beautiful smile on her face right now.
That was another name I got from, much to my surprise, Mrs. Dimples. Oh, one of the boys was Mr. Dimples, yes.
Aww.
That was another talk about.
So you were Mr. and Mrs. Dimples?
Yes, but that was just the same teacher trying to think of getting us all friendly, I think. But it was just that I didn't know till then I had dimples, but I knew the boy she talked about had dimples. And it's, it's just a self-awakening moment, really.
To find out that you've got dimples.
Yeah. I didn't know.
Moment of brilliant realisation.
Yeah. She was quite a clever teacher, I think, in the baby's class.
I remember when I must have found out I had dimples at some point, and I was so happy because I used to read these books that were, I don't know if you remember, Grandma, I used to read these Sweet Valley books that they were these American, quite trashy teenage literature about these two blonde girls, and they were just perfect, these blonde girls with their straight long hair and their blue eyes and their perfect dimples and their perfect cheeks. Oh God, I can't believe I used to read these books. But anyway, and I sort of had this idea in my mind of what these perfect girls looked like, and that was about dimples. And then one day somebody complimented me on my dimples, and I thought, oh, great. Just the blue eyes and the blonde hair to go.
Yes, because we're not aware of anything like a dimple on our own features.
No.
And it comes as a bit of a surprise because we just don't think about it.
Well, exactly, because if you think about when you look at your face in the mirror, it's unusual. It's unusual to sort of give yourself a big grin in the mirror, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe it's
a bit of a funny
nice
thing to
practice.
do.
Yeah.
Yes, and yes, it used to puzzle me that for quite a while as a child, I used to say, well, I can look at myself in a mirror and I can see someone that's standing there. Is the image I see in the mirror correct. Like the image of that someone standing near me is correct. How can that be? Trying to work out how it was that I could look at myself in a mirror and I could also look at a person and supposedly see exactly what these two images were right, were correct. And so the eye was a bit of a wonder to me for a while as a child, wondering if we were seeing correctly in a mirror or just standing, turning to someone. And I never puzzled it out, and why I puzzled about that, I don't know. But it's just, I think as a child you wonder, everything's wonderful and you can't be sure of anything for a while. Just a world of wonder. And the clouds in the sky, the colours in the sky, the moon in the sky, and all the things that we have to look at and wonder for a while. Then we get used to them and start to accept everything, don't we? Because I suppose as we develop, we obviously wonder as we grow, and then we become to accepting and realise that we are seeing things as they are, that it is exact, that it is a true image that we can see. And it takes a while to be absolutely sure of that. I think so, anyway.
Well, I don't know that I'm there yet, really, because... But, you know, you hear about things like even a simple thing, that some people see colours differently.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
I mean, men and women see colours differently.
Yeah.
And some people are colour blind,
yes.
so they don't...
Which makes you doubt.
Yeah. And so it does make you doubt perception.
Yeah.
But you know, on the other side of that, I suppose, is that it keeps my sense of wonder alive.
And once again, I come back to St. Paul and another of his speeches when he said, it was Portia in The Merchant of Venice, wasn't it? The quality of mercy is not strained. Mercy. She was talking about mercy, another quality. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. It is mightiest in the mightiest. It is possible both in monarch and in clown. I can't remember all the speech, but that's another quality. And she was wanting, of course, Shylock not to want his pound of flesh from the Merchant of Venice. Payments, I don't know who wanted the pound of flesh. It was the Jew, wasn't it? From
Yeah.
the Merchant of Venice. And Portia, the judge, was trying to argue him out of this obsession. And it was the quality she was talking about was quality of mercy. And of course Shylock took no notice at all of that quality. That's another quality, to have mercy, as we always hope that enemies of us will have mercy on us. But it is another quality.
Yeah. Forgiveness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Forgiveness for whatever, and not to demand. Well, we still say not to demand the pound of flesh, and that was it, wasn't it? It was wanted from the Merchant of Venice, a pound of flesh cut from nearest his heart. So then clever Portia was able to say, yes, but it does say a pound of flesh. It doesn't say that you can have any blood. So you would have to take the pound of flesh without any blood. It would have to be just flesh and nothing else. So that was very clever.
Oh, I forgot that bit.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Must be grand to be able to take the ground from people's feet like that, mustn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
so cleverly.
To be so quick thinking.
Yeah. Yes, without being angry and dominant, just sweet reason. Where does that come in? I don't know. Where does sweet reason phrase come from?
Oh, I thought you just made it
remember.
up.
I can't remember.
So, let's talk about forgiveness.
Yeah.
Have you ever had to forgive somebody for something?
Over and over through life.
So tell me when you've had to do that. Tell me the way you had to forgive someone.
It happens all the time, really. There's always something to forgive.
Yeah.
Otherwise, people are continually quarrelling.
But I want an example, Grandma. Give me an example. Give me one of your stories.
Oh, well, starting once again as a young child, I must have been really, really irritating. I know I must, in my family of siblings, because I was convinced that my dollies were alive. Nothing could persuade me otherwise. And my siblings, of course, took advantage of that, and I was teased unmercifully. And the thing that absolutely broke me was, well, it said, right, if your dolly is alive, we're going to throw her on the fire, and if she screams, we'll believe you.
Oh my gosh.
And I never can ever forget the sight of my dolly being burned in the fire. Everybody had the fire in those days, and the fire was always very hot and flaming. And I was haunted for a long while by the picture of my dolly. Of course, her little face crumbled up and disappeared.
Oh my gosh.
Of course, all her hand and legs went. And no, she didn't change expression.
Oh.
But it was absolute torture for me.
Oh.
And I was having the screaming habdabs for her.
Yeah.
Which not only made my siblings more and more hilarious. But I think, in a way, that's good for you, to grow up with other children in the family, because it brings you face to face with reality. And you don't always want to make believe as a child. It's part of being a child. But it's not really good to make believe to such great lengths as the way I was doing. But it was so irritating to other people.
But then did you find a way to forgive your siblings for doing that? Did you manage to forgive
eventually, them? But it did take a while, and I had to really think about it as a child, and it wasn't easy. But also the fact that the numbers were uneven. I was on my own, the others were all of the same opinion, 3 of them, and they were all saying I was ridiculous just to believe this. So it was 3 against 1 anyway, and
did that convince you that your dollies weren't alive after all, or did you still believe after that?
Eventually, yes, I did. I realised how silly I'd been. I think it was probably what brought it home to me most of all. When my little brother and myself were on our own, the older ones had gone on to higher things in like school. And I was doing my make-believe things, wanting him to play along with me, which he did. And then, all of a sudden, in my imaginative game, when he had a role and I had a role, and every object that we were playing with had a role, and it was all like a little play acting. We were all doing what we had to do. And suddenly my little brother stood in front of me and said, Irene, his fists were clenched together. Can we just have a fight? I shall never forget the shock of it.
That's brilliant. What did you say? What did you do?
What did you say? Why? Oh, well, I'd like to. But we're playing at such a thing. I'd like to have a fight.
He's still got his fists up.
Yeah. That's well, I'm not going away. I'm going to my room. I'm not staying with you if you want to fight.
Oh.
But it was a shock of it to think that he could be thinking about pistage and bashing me when it was something altogether different.
Yeah.
No, nothing like what we're playing at. He definitely wasn't with me.
He'd obviously just had enough, hadn't he? He wanted his brother at home to have a fight with. Danny and I used to fight all the time when we were little. Yeah. But I quite liked a bit of,
I didn't.
a bit of a fight.
No, I
bit of
didn't.
a wrestle.
No, I often wonder if that's because as from quite being a young child, they said I was told that I was christened Irene because it meant peace, and the world was at war, the First World War, and all the little baby girls that were arriving at that time were called Irene because everybody wanted peace. And this was told to me over and over again, went through my early childhood, that my name meant peace, and I used to think that was what I ought to be, I ought to be peaceful. There shouldn't be any fighting, it was wrong. And I think that sort of stuck with me a little bit, that fighting wasn't right, and nobody must do it. But it was a very, very horrible war, that First World War.
It was. No wonder everybody was praying for peace via the names of their children. I love that idea.
Yes, it seemed to be the only thing that mattered. Because my mother wondered if she would raise me because there was no great scarcity of food, and there was only black bread to buy or something. Can't imagine what that was like. There really was a big shortage, and she thought I would be delicate because I was born at that time of great food shortage, and if Britain had to go on much longer, we would have been starved to death because there wasn't enough food coming into the country at all. I didn't know about it. I was unaware. I was only told about it afterwards. That if I was not as strong physically as I ought to be, it was because of the wrong time to arrive.
Well. We are blessed today that we have such abundance available to us.
Yeah.
We really are.
Yeah, we are.
Right, Grandma, I think we should bring this one to a close.
I'm sorry?
We're going to bring this conversation to a close now.
Yeah.
It's been lovely to chew the fat.
Yeah. It's just a few home truths, I suppose.
Yeah. Grandma?
Lancashire is a cold place today. It's frosty, it's dark, it is the darkest time of the year, and it is a cold time of the year. There are not a lot of birds about, as there normally are, and the leaves have gone from the trees, and it is the time when the world seems to be going to sleep. And I think about the ancient times and the solstice, when the ancient Britons used to gather at Stonehenge on these short days and offer sacrifices to the gods to bring the sun and daylight back to England. And that was when they used to gather at Stonehenge, wasn't it? And how scary it must have been to mark the days going shorter and shorter and darker and less light. And then in January to realise that things were turning and the sun, the daylight, was coming back again, and realise that each day was growing a little bit longer. What a fascinating time it must have been, and how amazing those people.
Do you mean it's fascinating because to think about how they didn't understand the science behind why those changes in nature were happening?
They didn't understand. They were trying to. This is why they built Stonehenge. I can never quite understand why they had to get this particular blue stone from the high mountains in Wales and bring it all the way to Salisbury Plain by rolling and on poles over the ground and pulling through the rivers until they got to Stonehenge, where they built the circle. And there were these clever people, I can't remember what they were called, that would measure by some primitive instruments exactly how much our sun was being lost every day and just when it started to recover. And I think they made notches on the stones to help them to understand what was happening. It must have been very revealing and it seemed like great knowledge when they realised the same thing happened year after year, and that there was no need to despair, that the light would come back again at such a time, and feel quite sure that this would happen. And that, you know, they made sacrifices, didn't they, to make sure that it did happen. And then they must have eventually found they didn't need to make sacrifices to this thing to happen, that it would happen anyway. And that's an enormous thing to have found out. That I mean, there was so much to find out about the planet and the space and all the things that went on. And
but Grandma, I've been thinking about that, and don't you think that it's sort of that act of making sacrifice, it gave those people a sense of responsibility, of connection to what was happening in nature around them. You know, if we make this sacrifice of this animal, or if we build this structure to honour and to mark what we see happening in the world around us, it creates a sense of agency and, you know, a responsibility and a feeling that if we do these things, then the earth will respond by giving us the light back and the, you know, the growth that we need to continue living. Whereas, you know, maybe if now we feel disconnected from, you know, those people they lived in a way that was very, very connected to the land. And I wonder now if that's something that we've lost. What do you think?
There is responsibility. That is a worry, because we must still stand in awe of all that happens in the universe. We must still, I think, respect limits and not want to do the impossible and hope to build another Earth on another planet, the way the way things are in the atmosphere, and I think that the quality of the possibility of life on the Earth is not repeatable anywhere else because of a lot of factors. And I think that they should always bear this in mind, that the quality of the possibility of life on Earth is very remote and probably not possible anywhere else in the universe as we know it. To find a planet similar to the Earth would mean something which, of course, minds the mind boggle, going through what are they called? The some hole.
A black hole.
The black hole, to another universe, a different universe, where there might be the possibility of another Earth. But there doesn't seem to be any way of getting through these black holes. It seems to be impossible, but what seemed to be impossible once is now possible, so we never know. But it's a fascinating subject, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It really does make the mind boggle.
It doesn't seem possible on the universe that we know, in the universe that we know, that there's going to be another planet discovered like Earth.
Can I ask you, Grandma, that quality of incredible uniqueness of conditions that we have, you know, they call it the Goldilocks, whatever it is, Goldilocks something or other, here on Earth, you know, does that help you to have your faith in God? Does that give you faith in God?
My faith in God is something altogether different. I haven't tried to explore things that I don't know about. I just had to accept that in my lifetime I have found it a wonderful help to be able to pray to God. And there are times when the stress is too much, when you're really, really at the limit, and you think, I cannot cope with this, I cannot go through with this, I just cannot do it. It's too terrible, it's too frightening, I'm not suitable, I can't do this task that I have to do. And then when I really am nearly screaming because I have my inadequacy, that I kneel down, and suddenly I'd get an answer, and I don't know where it comes from. I do get an answer. I seem to have to reach those limits of my thoughts before this happens, and it always amazes me. And sometimes I'm not saying anything or doing anything. I'm just kneeling because I'm desperate, and I find that I'm crying, and I don't know why, because of some relief from somewhere that calms me and reassures me, and I don't know what it is. I think there's something beyond us, and I don't know what it is. That's all I can say. There is something else, and if we ever reach those limits of what we have to suffer and go through that experience, if other people do, I would like to know. And it isn't anything I plan, it's something that happens, and only happens rarely in times of extreme despair, when I suddenly have this solace in my being that I don't know where it comes from, but it is solace, it is sure. And I just say, I do believe at that time. And maybe doubts will come again later. But at these times of extreme stress, it comes from somewhere, and I don't know where.
That's beautiful, Grandma. It reminds me of, I have this wonderful book which is called Love Poems from God, and it's a collection of writings from different spiritual writers over the last few millennia, and one is St. Francis of Assisi, and it's very simple. It just says, it's called "It Is a Lie," and he says, "It is a lie, any thought about God which does not comfort you." And that's it. It's just so simple and so beautiful.
Yeah.
And that God is that. And I think it's so easy. I don't know, I find it so easy to, because I have a tendency, it sounds like you do as well, to find fault with myself all the time, and to just, I get that voice going through my head that tells me that I'm rubbish at this and that's not good enough, and if only I could be better, and and that I think sometimes I can project that onto my idea about what God is, and thinking that God expects something from me, or that I should behave in this way or that way. But it's like you say, like the solace and the comfort, just which it actually is just profound acceptance. It's unconditional love, right? That's
it seems
God.
Also like absolutely uncompromising truth, that I'm here, it is me, I am here, I'm with you. Whatever, I am with you. Whatever you decide to do, I'm with you. Just take courage and try to do what seems right. It isn't that, it isn't a voice except a certainty. That's all the only way I can describe it.
Certainty.
It's not a voice, it's not anyone talking to me.
Yeah.
It is a certainty, without any doubt at all. And at that time, I'd say, I do believe. I do believe and really, really mean it.
Yeah. And do you know what? I think at that, I know exactly what you mean. And at those times of certainty, for me as well, there's a sense of wholeness, a sense of completeness.
Yeah,
I feel
absolutely
whole.
Yeah.
And I've been noticing today that there's just this nagging little sense that there's something missing. There's something missing in me or in my life, just niggling away. What is that? What is it? And I've been reading The Power of Now recently by this German guy called Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah.
Tolle, whatever. And he says that's something that it's our sense of separation from everything. That's what makes us human. This kind of this ego, this mind that we have, or that we convince ourselves that we are, and so then we feel separate and we feel incomplete as a result, and that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. The reason that we are is the reason we feel incomplete. Is that what you said?
The kind of consciousness that we human beings have is that of an individual identity. This I voice in my head separates us from each other and from the rest of creation, and makes us feel just separate, when in fact we're part of the great everything. We're part of all.
We are.
We are, rather than I am.
It is somehow comforting to feel that there is understanding somewhere about this feeling that we have, and it is acceptable, and I think it's just maybe the reassurance that we're not alone in it, that there is something that is with us and is helping whatever happens, to cope with what happens, and all happens to everyone, I'm sure. Maybe some people have a charmed life, but I don't know of this. We're only aware of what happens to us, and that we all seem to me to have a certain amount to bear, a certain amount to go through, a certain amount of pain and suffering, and And happiness, and that's the happiness as well, is there, without doubt.
Yeah.
It's absolutely wonderful.
It is.
And so we get the heights and the downs, and maybe it's as one of my sons used to say to me, Mum, everything's got an opposite, hasn't it? So I started to think about that. Everything's got an up and everything's got a down. Everything's got light and everything's got dark. Everything you can mention has an opposite. You can't think of anything that hasn't got a contrast. And it is the whole that we have to accept, not just the good bits. And we've got to accept and learn from the good bits as well as the bad bits, and somehow find our way through the muddle and reach, I don't think it'll be El Dorado, but you never know. Could be anything.
What's El Dorado?
El Dorado, I don't know, was it the, what was it that I think it was in Greek philosophy, that somebody was trying to do the impossible and reach, I think he was climbing a very high mountain, and when they got to the summit, no, they didn't shout El Dorado. What was it? It's Excelsior or something. There's a word that means, the absolute top of everything, that you've done it, that you're there.
Oh, I don't know.
It's part of the Greek philosophy, and I've asked your father about it.
Isn't that Eureka?
Eureka, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Couldn't think of the word. Yeah. So I wonder what El Dorado is.
I wonder what El Dorado is.
Yes.
Isn't it a place?
Why I said it. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know.
There's so much to read. We can't read everything, can we? So much to try and absorb, and we can't do it all.
No.
And we can only accept what we do know and what is positive. And was it different people that have never been able to find the truth? What was it in, now that we're nearing Christmas, is the tale of that Dickens wrote about
A Christmas Carol.
A Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
And the different lessons he had to learn from the Christmas past, Christmas present, and the Christmas yet to come. And didn't reach any conclusions, did he? Except that...
well, didn't he turn his life around? He wanted to
turn his life around, and he decided to make the most of it.
Yeah.
And really spread this feeling of once again back to how we began, of love and goodwill and happiness to each other, instead of being hateful and horrible and not liking anybody.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what the lesson was of the Christmas Carol, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Christmas past.
Grandma, I want to ask you a question. How would you like to be remembered, one day, in 100 years' time, when they're reflecting on the wonderful Irene May Wilkinson and her life? How would you... Because you remember so well the stories of your ancestors and what they did and what their lives might have been like and their characters, and I wonder what you would like, my grandchildren to be saying about...
I would like to say that she did try not to do a lot of harm while she was around.
She tried not to do a lot of harm.
It's perhaps too high a pinnacle to try to do good. But if I don't do any harm to people, I think that's something I'd be pleased about. I don't want to...
That's such a wonderfully humble...
Pardon?
I just love how that's such a humble aim to have, you know, I just think that's really beautiful. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I do think.
Tried not to do any harm.
I'm absolutely honest, Naomi. I don't want to do any harm.
Yeah.
I don't want to. Things are so precious, aren't they? So precious. All my grandchildren, each one. My children there.
Oh, spilt the tea. I've spilt the tea.
Oh no.
It's all right. It's gone on my book. But it's
Oh,
probably a good time to finish, to press stop anyway.
I'm sorry, Naomi.
We've got some mince pies to make, haven't we?
Oh dear.
We
We do commit ourselves.
Yeah.
Bunny boat, like a bird on the wing, over the sea to sky. Carry the lad that's born to be king, over the sea to sky. Speed, bonny boat, brave bonny boat, on with the sailors cry. Speed, bonny boat, sail, bonny boat, over the sea to sky. Speed, bonny boat, like a bird on the wing, on with the sailors cry. Carry the lad that's born to be king, over the sea to sky. I don't know all the words really.